What's up, everyone? Welcome back once again to the world famous Football Goons podcast. This week, we're doing something a little bit different for us and unique because it's a slow time just before fantasy football really kicks into overdrive. And, camps have mostly broken up for the summer. We're presenting some trades or NFL proposals and debating which side would say no, if any. We see this question come out quite frequently, especially on Twitter, where somebody posts up a trade idea or the NBA trade machine a lot of times and just kind of throws up the comment, who says no? So we're taking it one step further and actually diving into some realistic proposals here. The only rule is that it's got to be somewhat realistic proposal. So Rocco can't, just go full homer and say like, hey, we'll, trade you one used cleat for JJ Watt, something just totally ridiculous is completely off the board. So feel free to chime in on YouTube if you're watching live with your thoughts, even with your ideas as we discuss some of these. We want to keep this as an open dialogue. First things first here, though, kick it off today, depending on when you're listening tonight, we're celebrating Father's Day here in the US. I feel like I have to preface that because we do have so many listeners all over the world, which still boggles my mind. But here in the U.S., we're celebrating Father's Day. So what did your Father's Day look like? Good day, bad day, indifferent?
Yeah, we had a nice time. I went to church, came back, watched a little week. I believe it was week 13 replay on NFL Network today. Then I went to my dad's house, my parents' house, and ate dinner there. Good little nice. It was pretty much any Sunday, but I got a card, so that was good.
Nice, yeah.
I was given a basketball hoop on Thursday for Father's Day because the wife couldn't get it out of the car without me, so I got it early. So that's fun. But yeah, we had due to some poor scheduling, but I understand how that can happen sometimes. We actually just had a 3-day weekend of dance recitals. So I played Father of the Year by attending 3 of the exact same dance recitals 3 nights in a row. So I just showed how great of a father I am and why I deserve a Father's Day by watching the same dance recital 3 days in a row.
Honestly, I don't think anybody's arguing that, at least in the current discussion. You'll notice the deal is gone. He's on vacation, but no one's going to argue that you're Dad of the Year in the current discussion, given the amount of crazy things that you do, from hairstyling and dance recitals and things like that. No, that's not to really throw anybody else under the bridge, but
no, he's the best dad in this conversation.
Yeah. So,
you and I are just fine, but he is the best dad here.
Yeah, I'm still trying to win Dad of the Year in my house, and I have a 4.5-year-old for the first time. So we'll see how that goes. Hectic day here. We did church in the morning. We ran for lunch. Came home, prepared for family number 2 to come over. So it's been a full day. It's been fun, though, to kind of see everybody, let the kids see everybody. So I kind of joked, my ideal Father's Day is just sit on the couch and watch the Phillies. And that really was not in the cards today. So, but then again, I am kind of the exception. So, but anyway, let's get into the discussion here. The way we're going to do this is each of us has presented 2 who says no topics, I guess I'll call them. Deal did submit some as well, so we'll talk through his. We won't be able to get as much of his personal insight from them, but we'll still talk through them just for the sake of continuity here. So the first one that we're going to talk about is who says no. The Jaguars trade Dante Fowler to the Colts for a 2019 third-round pick. Who says no in this arrangement? And the way we're going to do this too, I'm going to throw it over each time to Miles, who is going to give us the implications of what this would look like salary cap wise. So Miles, let us know.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. All these trades, we made sure first and foremost that it could happen. You can't have a team $2 million under trade for Le'Veon Bell. It's not realistic. So this one specifically, Fowler's in his contract year, did not have his 5th-year option picked up by the Jags. They're a comfortable $20 million under the cap and would pick up an extra 3.6 in room to help carry over into next year. The Colts would claim the other 3.8 that Dante Fowler's owed. I'm thinking they might be able to squeeze him in with their current $52 million in cap space. So, that's basically like me giving my son a quarter, which hurts a little bit, but not that much.
Well, it depends on which side of that thing you're on, because whoever's getting the quarter, in his case, I mean, that's like the world. So
yeah, true.
Go ahead, Rock.
I'll jump right in with this one, and I don't think that the Jag. I think Jags say no first, for no other reason than, well, actually for two reasons. One, they have the makings of a really special defense down there, and I'm not necessarily sure that they want to break it up. We just saw what the Eagles can do with depth at the defensive line and edge positions. Why would you not just continue to build your defense that way? Just, you cannot have too many edge rushers. That's not a thing. Okay. And then two, I don't think the Jaguars would do it because I don't think they have any interest in making any other team in their division any better. You know what I mean? Like I might be able to be swayed if this was another team, on the other conference or in another division, but definitely not to do a division foe.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, he's kind of been, it's tough to say bust. Maybe bust in terms of third overall pick. He missed his first year, and then he had 4 sacks, and now 8 last year was nice. He has been largely outplayed by Yannick Ngakoue, which kind of hurts us. He was a third-round pick the next year, but ultimately, I agreed with you, Rock. I think this is nice for Indy because I think they're really a good pass rusher away from being an average defense, which I don't mean to say negatively. For the Colts the last decade or so, to call them an average defense is kind of nice. I think he would definitely be an upgrade over Margus Hunt. But if you're Jacksonville, any of these teams with championship inspirations and aspirations, as they should have, depth is hard. I know he's not a starter right now behind Calais Campbell and Ngakoue, but ultimately moving that for a third-round pick, okay, it's nice. That's great, but you got a shot to win this thing this year. Maybe you're not a favorite, but you got a shot. I'm not trying to trade away depth.
Yeah, and just to kind of peel back the curtain here a little bit, this first one was my first submission here. So my line of thinking is that I don't think anybody says no. And only for this reason. I get what we're saying because of trading within the division. A lot of times that's less than ideal. You don't want to strengthen another team. But I don't think anybody's looking at the Colts and saying they're going to be a potential Super Bowl candidate this year. And maybe I'm looking at that wrong. Maybe that'll change over the next couple months when we start to see what Andrew Luck is doing physically. But as much as the Colts need a pass rushing piece to try and be competitive this year, I don't think it necessarily puts them over the top. So yes, because they have so much salary cap room, I think it's appealing to them to obviously add a piece as an edge rusher who can make a difference for them this year. But I'm also not scared if I'm the Jaguars that if I'm taking an expiring contract and getting something in return for it and not really killing myself defensively. Like, yes, I understand he did have 8 sacks last year. I understand he's a rotational player for them at this point, but I just don't see the downside for them of being a little bit future-minded while also not compromising too much right now, because I don't think there's any way, obviously, when you decline his option, unless something miraculous happens, that he's coming back. And even if he has a great year this year and you say, hey, Dante, we were just kidding, man, let's work something out, you may have already burned the bridge. So I don't know. What are you going to get from him this year now that he knows he's not part of your plans for the future? Is he going to play up to a contract year? Just so many questions. If I'm the Jaguars, I feel like I've already decided that it's not in the cards for me. So why not get something in return for him while I can?
I understand wanting to get something for him by all means. And not picking up that 5th year option pretty much means that you're done with him. I mean, he could go out and have a fantastic year and you could work something out. I guess it wouldn't be the strangest thing to happen in Jacksonville, but the fact is that unless a guy is done, I can't see trading him within the division. I just can't. Like, you don't trade a guy to a division player unless you feel like that guy has nothing left to offer your team or any team for that matter. You know what I mean? Because like here's a guy he had hurt his whole rookie year. Then he comes back with 4 sacks. Then he jumps up to 8. What if he becomes a 12 sack, 13 sack guy for the next 5 years for a division rival as you're trying to win a division and you're super competitive? I just can't see trading him within the division, not knowing whether or not his career is on the downslide.
Yeah, the division doesn't do anything for me. I'm not scared. I mean, I get your point, I guess, but ultimately that would be the last thing I'm worried about. For me, I don't even need him to be a 12, 13 sack guy for him to be a key piece to me as I chase a ring. I mean, like you kind of hit it on the head. Philly had nobody over like 8 sacks, 9 sacks, but because they rotated so well and everybody had 5, that's key to a great defense. As the season goes on, if you're going to play from September to February, it's pretty important to have some fresh legs out there. And I think if you're Jacksonville and you ditch Dante Fowler, yeah, you still have Ngakoue, you still have Calais Campbell, but now I've got I'm looking at the depth chart here, Carroll Phillips, Dwayne Smoot. I mean, are these guys you want to put out there in an AFC Championship game chasing down Tom Brady or Ben Roethlisberger? I'm not sure that. Yes, okay, the 3rd rounder in 2019 is way better than like the 5th in 2020 compensatory they're going to get. But they're at a place where they can't have such an eye on the future. A 3rd round pick's better than a 5th versus that great 3rd pass rusher is more important to me than a 3rd rounder next year.
Not to mention the fact that we keep throwing out the name Calais Campbell. He's not old, but 32 is not a spring chicken. So let's not forget that either.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess the consensus here is that the Jaguars are most likely to say no in this scenario. I think we all agree there's no real reason at all for the Colts to say no in this situation.
Oh, no. I mean, they have the edge spot available. They have the money that if he comes in Indy and has that 12-sack year Rock just said, all right, you can make him paid whatever you want to because you've got the money to do it. And then the 3rd-round pick, I don't mind losing, because you're already +1 next year thanks to the Jets trade. You have an extra 2nd already. So, yeah, you wouldn't have a 3rd-round pick, but you have 2 seconds. So that's okay with me.
All right, let's talk about our next scenario here. This one's an interesting one. Who says no? The Texans receive Mark Ingram from the Saints for a 2019 3rd-round pick. Miles, what does this do to the cap for both teams?
Yeah, this is a pretty nice one for the cap. Houston, they're currently $35 million under the cap. They can easily fit in Ingram 6.2. That's no issue there. The Saints, however, would benefit as well. They're only $4.1 million under right now, which is great. You're under, but let's not forget the rollover for next year. Moving Ingram would more than double that, as they would save 4.6 of Ingram's salary, boosting them up to 8.7. So this is actually a really good move financially for the Saints. Houston, yeah, you're taking on salary, but who cares? You've got money to burn.
Yeah, I think the Saints say no first in this scenario. I don't think a 3rd is high enough. Like, just because they have not used him the way they could does not mean they don't value him at what he should be valued at. So although no one's going to get a 1st-round pick for a 1st-round running back, I know that's not how this works. A 3rd rounder, and I think the importance here too is not knowing what Houston 3rd-round pick you're going to get in this scenario, because 2 years ago it was in the 20s, which the 3rd rounder means you're picking in the 80s to 90s, as opposed to last year, which would have been like 67. Right. You know what I mean? So there's a big difference there. I think that's really where to quote our past pods, that range right there is where you start throwing darts, or at least, start to think about throwing darts. So, not knowing what Houston pick you get, on top of it probably being too high of a pick to begin with. I'd rather see that in a 2nd. Even if you told me it was the last pick of the 2nd round, I would rather that than a 3rd-round pick. So I think the Saints are the first to say no.
I agree. And I kind of look at it from the perspective that Miles had the first time around. The Saints are a team who were the worst blown coverage probably in the history of the NFL away from winning the Super Bowl. I think at least 2 of us in this conversation, maybe all 3, agree that if they got through that game, they are most likely going to and probably beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl. So with that in mind, and I'm like the biggest Alvin Kamara guy. Like I will bang the drum for Kamara all day, but we don't know yet that he could be the lead guy. Now you're going to get a nice little 4-game window to try and test that out and see how it goes. But after those 4 games, you're going to get Mark Ingram back and be able to course correct if things aren't going right. And if they go better than you expected, then you do have a little bit of flexibility there. But beyond Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, Daniel Lasco, Boston Scott, Jonathan Williams, like, are any of those guys keeping your offense at the high enough level, especially with the production they had in the running game last year, to put them right back there as an NFC championship, Super Bowl contender? And I don't think so. I think they're probably not confident enough yet in Kamara to really move on from Mark Ingram. And they didn't do anything to set themselves up moving forward in the future, to do that at this point. So I think they'd almost have to hang on to Mark Ingram.
Yeah, it's crazy how much the Saints are parallel to the Jags from the last trade. To me, it's just, you've got that championship eye, and it's very clear they prefer Kamara, and it's likely they should. I don't know, but is it worth trading away a key piece of what made you so good last year for maybe a better pick? And it's nice for them to get the pick because they don't have their first-round pick next year, thanks to the major trade up for Marcus Davenport, which was what it was. But I don't think they're at a place to move Mark Ingram. And actually, and this was my trade offer, I don't even like this from Houston's end all that much, to be honest. I think both teams say no to this if I proposed it to them. Because ultimately, Houston just had a draft where they didn't pick until the middle of the 3rd round. You need to recoup some of those things. And I don't think you can afford to move next year's 3. Now, they have an extra second next year, but still, they need that depth. And while, the group of us, we like Mark Ingram, they seem to really like D'Onta Foreman from last year. And I know, South, that was your boy leading into the draft class last year. Yeah. I think Ingram's a clear upgrade from Lamar Miller, but it depends on Houston's opinion. Is Miller Foreman better than forcing the ball to Ingram? And again, kind of like Dante Fowler, Mark Ingram's in a contract year as well. So you've got to worry about, are we going to pay him after this year, or did we just trade a 3rd-round pick for ultimately nothing?
I think the problem there, too, is that I think Ingram Foreman is better than Miller Foreman, but Ingram and Foreman are probably two similar players. Not that they're like identical, but I think what made Ingram so special last year was the legitimate change going to a guy like Alvin Kamara. You're asking Mark Ingram to do something very specific that he was good at, so you don't have that change of pace with an Ingram Foreman pairing, so it makes kind of both of them a little bit more useless in that situation.
This is kind of off the cuff, but is this a more appealing trade for either side if Ingram moves to the Texans, but in return with a pick, maybe another player, maybe a little more experienced player, whether it's an Alfred Blue or even a Lamar Miller, comes over to the Saints as compensation, so that you do have a little bit more of a veteran presence, a little bit more of a change of pace there still to add to Kamara.
That's certainly nice from the Saints end, but maybe I'm alone in saying I didn't like the trade for Houston to begin with. I'm not giving you Lamar Miller too, unless, of course, it's just one of those things where they're trying to get rid of Lamar Miller. They don't want to accidentally give him the ball anymore, but they don't want to just ignore that he's on the roster. I don't know. They certainly have the money to eat the dead cap, but I mean, if you're New Orleans, I like it a lot better if I'm getting Lamar Miller back.
Yeah, I think the only way this works for New Orleans is if it's like in all honesty, if it's like a Foreman for Ingram, move, you're definitely getting worse going down to Foreman, but it gives you the ability to kind of pair Kamara with a similar type back to Ingram, and you're probably paying less money, and you're not giving up a pick, so that's the only way I can see them do it. I don't think anybody at this point wants to take on Lamar Miller's contract.
Oh.
and lack of playing ability, and the fact that he doesn't pair well with Alvin Kamara, and like that just doesn't work at all. So unless it's Foreman, I'm out for the Saints, and I don't think the Texans want to trade Foreman.
All right, no Alfred Blue love in this conversation.
Nobody cares about Alfred Blue.
Come on now.
You're my boy, Blue. If he's got kids at today's Father's Day, maybe his kids care about. That's about it.
You're my boy, Blue.
Stop.
All right, who says no? Who says no? The Eagles trade Zach Ertz to the Los Angeles Chargers for a first and a third rounder. This is one that kind of struck up this whole idea for us. It kind of came up in our conversation internally a couple days ago. So, Miles, hit us with some cap implications here.
So these guys are both pretty tight up against the cap. The Chargers are just under $9 million in free money. Philly's even tighter with 5.9. Ertz is slated to make this surprised me. He's only at 4.9 this year, so it does work. However, this is our closest thing to like an issue of the whole pod here. The Chargers would have to maneuver after this season because they're currently, I think it was like $4 million under for next year, and Ertz's salary jumps to 11.8 in 2019. So this would make the Chargers over the cap in 2019, so they have to make some moves. But ultimately for this year, this definitely works.
This is an interesting one to me because at first glance, it's really appealing because the projecting side of you, and look, I love Zach Ertz, but the projecting side of you looks at the fact that they just brought in Dallas Goedert as a tight end in the draft.
That's Philly Goddard, sir.
Philly Goddard. Sorry. I wanted to keep things as accurate as I could without letting my Homer bias get in. But so they just bring in Goddard. It looks as though you've got a potential star at the tight end position here, even early on. You know, I know that's a lot of speculation at this point, but for a team who is a Super Bowl repeating champion or potentially a Super Bowl repeating champion this year, to add a first and a third to move a player is super appealing. But then when you look at how much Zach Ertz meant to that team during the playoff run last year, I just don't think you can do it. Even with, you know, all of the appeal that's out there for Goddard, watching some of the video early on of what he's able to do already, you know, through some camps and OTAs and things, it's tempting. But I just think you're losing way too much. I mean, he was their leading receiver last year. He was clearly their most clutch guy in the playoffs last year. He's got a good rapport with both of your potential quarterbacks. And I'm sure, you know, if Nate Sudfeld ever had to come into the game, he'd love him just as much. So I think if you're the Eagles, you have to say no. As tempting as it would be to get a first and a third for a team who is potential dynasty at this point.
Yeah, especially in a sense of that gives you multiple picks in the first 3 rounds next year.
Yeah.
Plus, the Eagles are they're slated to be $30 million over the cap next year.
Yeah.
Now, 20 of that is Nick Foles, which is 99.9% not going to be on the roster. But you're headed towards mega deal for Carson Wentz territory. So clearing that 11.8 is a really big deal, plus getting all those picks. It's a tough call for them, and I think it's an equally tough call for the Chargers because that's a huge price. And while Zach Ertz is an incredible player, Hunter Henry is back next year, and everyone was projecting him to be kind of that Pro Bowl level tight end. He's been a great red zone threat. Are you willing to give up a first and a third for basically 1 year, although Ertz and Hunter Henry going forward is incredible? But I think the combat with, boy, that's a big price for like 1 year of him to be our only tight end. You're at the end of Phillip Rivers, and I'm on record already, and I'm not backing down. The Chargers are my AFC Super Bowl team. Hunter Henry deals a big blow to that because Phillip Rivers over time has loved his tight ends. Loved them. And now, it's Antonio Gates. It's hard not to love it, but that's a big gap in that offense. So it's a really tough internal struggle of like, are we really going to give up a 1 and a 3 when we're getting Henry back next year? But we're nearing the end of our quarterback's time here. So and at the same time, but we might use that first rounder on a quarterback next year. But Super Bowl. So it's really back and forth for both teams.
Yeah. And that's such a narrow window too for the Chargers, because look at it this way. Like, you still don't really know what you have in Mike Williams. You are starting Virgil Green as your tight end now. Keenan Allen is not exactly the picture of health.
Watch it.
For as great as we all think he is, you know what I mean? Like, so you're taking a potentially like elite defense and kind of throwing some rough people out on the other side of the ball. So it's very tempting for them.
Let me jump in here, because this trade is the one that I looked at this entire list and I was like, this is insane. This is insanity. There's no way either side says yes to this. You have Zach Ertz, way too important to your team. They value the tight end way too much. I mean, they were rolling out 3 tight ends on the regular last year. So the fact that they got Philly Goddard doesn't mean anything to me. I expect to see Philly Goddard and Ertz on the field together a lot next year. Okay. I love Zach Ertz. He is as important as any other non-quarterback to that Eagles offense. I fully believe that. That being said, other than Rob Gronkowski in his absolute prime with no injuries, is a tight end going for a first and a third. It's just not going to happen. Like, it's unprecedented. We've never seen that happen, I don't think, ever. And if somebody out there wants to look that up and correct me, I'm all for it, because I don't think you're going to be able to. So, like, I'm looking at this and I'm getting heated from the standpoint of a Chargers fan, thinking, why would we give up a first and a third for a tight end? I don't care if it's Zach Ertz. And on the other side, I'm like, Zach Ertz is an extremely special player, and he's super important to Philadelphia. But I cannot rationally give up a first and a third round pick for a tight end. I just can't. So I think he's way too important to the team that he's on. And honestly, I know you both probably feel the same way. So me saying this is more so for our listeners. You start talking about Eagles and cap situations, and I'm not worried one bit, because how he's going to sprinkle his little fairy dust, and he's going to take care of it, and it's going to be done. And I know both of you believe that, but I want our fans and our listeners to understand that the fact that they're going to be $30 million over the cap next year means nothing to me. Okay, and I know it doesn't mean anything to Miles or Sal. Howie will figure it out. Okay, but no, yeah, this is a no-go trade for me. For both sides. You
said that in that visual, put it right in my head. What's that guy's name? Salt Bay? I need a Photoshop of Howie just sprinkling like change instead of salt.
Deal's on vacation, but he's a Photoshop guy. We'll make it happen.
He'll get on it.
I need Howie's head on there and just dollar bills or something coming out.
Yeah, I as much as I was just saying how intriguing it is for both teams, ultimately I think they both say no as well. It's too much for Ertz. And for me, like, yeah, the draft nerd in me is like, especially after this year where the Eagles had no day 2 picks and it was killing me, the thought of having 2 1s, 2 2s, and 2 3s next year is really, really, really exciting. But as much as, yeah, I'd love this to be a dynasty, I'd love it to be the future. You have no idea what the future holds, and there's no reason the Eagles aren't a favorite, if not the favorite, to win it again this year. And if I could trade a guaranteed Super Bowl this year, which I think Ertz helps you towards, by no means am I guaranteeing a Super Bowl, don't get me wrong here, but I'd rather have that being the favorite this year than being a favorite for 5-6 more years. I winning one, I want to make sure I get another one. I don't want to hope. And Ertz is too important on and off the field. I agree with you, Rock.
Yeah. Oh, man. My mouth actually watered when you mentioned all those picks, because, like, there's already discussion. And those of us that are nerdy enough to be into it already know how potentially, like, generational this next draft could be for defensive line, defensive end. Right. And, like, that's where so many expiring or dead contracts are with this Eagles team. It would just be so tasty to load up in that draft with all those picks. All right, here's an interesting one to round out this first grouping. Who says no? Follow me here. The Steelers get Tevin Coleman and T.Y. Hilton. Now, you're already saying, oh, that can't happen. How does that happen? Well, I'll tell you how it happens. Because the Colts get Lev Bell and the Falcons get TJ Watt. A 3-team trade. Miles, you're going to have to break this down to me. Explain this to me like I'm 5.
Bro, I'm all over this. First off, I'm curious if this would be the first ever 3-team trade in NFL history. I know that's an NBA thing, but
yeah,
I'm not sure that's ever happened in the NFL. But anyhow, Steelers currently 5.4 under the cap. They would move 15.3 with Bell and Watt, but take in about 12 million more with Coleman and Hilton. They'd move themselves to about 7.7 under. Steelers, good. Colts would clear 11 from Hilton, but add the 14.5 from Bell. They would be about 3.5 more, but as we said about 20 minutes ago, they can handle it with their 52 million in cap space.
Yes.
The Falcons are 6.6 under right now. They would lose out about 1.3 million by getting rid of Coleman, who surprisingly really doesn't make much, and bringing on TJ Watt. So Atlanta would still be about 5.3 under the cap. So all 3 teams would be fine financially here. So let's talk about what we think with the player value.
This is an interesting one because on the surface, you think like, man, there's no way this would happen. Like, the Steelers just can't do that. Honestly, when I look at this, I don't think it would be the Steelers who would say no. Because look, the Steelers, obviously Lev Bell is special beyond belief. Like if we're not talking about from a fantasy football perspective, you'd be hard pressed to find a better running back in the league, even with like all of his contract issues, some of the old behavioral things, and a little bit of the injury history. Lev Bell is phenomenal running back. I think Tevin Coleman is super underrated too. And they may be willing at this point, if it set them up in the right position, to get out of that Lev Bell drama at this point. You're heading toward a point where you're going to be transitioning. Your quarterback is in the twilight of his career. You're going to have to start to do some things. I don't know how much longer you're going to be able to play hardball with Lev Bell. There was already talk this past season that he was pretty serious about retiring. And then he came back and said, no, I'm not going to do it this time. So I don't think it would be them. I definitely don't think it would be the Falcons because, yes, they're giving up Tevin Coleman, but they're still pretty well set with Devonta Freeman. And then you're getting TJ Watt, which is a definite need on their team and a young upstart kind of player. I actually think it would be the Colts who would say no here. Only from the perspective of like, I think that we kind of overlook T.Y. Hilton for being a really, really, really good wide receiver. Yes, they need help at the running back position badly. But Marlon Mack may be their guy. He may be good. We don't know yet. And you're risking bringing in another guy who's already saying that he wants to be like the highest paid running back of all time. He wants to clear certain numbers on an organization who really doesn't have a lot of that drama. Now, yes, you have the money to do it, but you're adding a different element of contractual drama there and getting rid of probably your franchise quarterback's favorite player on the team and one of the best wide receivers in the entire league in T.Y. Hilton. So that's why I don't think that they would necessarily do that. That's a lot of money to put into one position and ruin the chemistry that you already have with your franchise quarterback.
So I brought this trade to the table. I obviously like it for, well, I say obviously like it, but I guess we could have brought trades that we didn't like, but I had fun with this and I came up with scenarios that I thought all 3 teams would agree on. So I think all 3 teams would say yes to this. I don't think the Colts say no just because I think they're at a point where they need to look out for Andrew Luck's best interest. And I don't mean from a football standpoint, I mean from a health standpoint. Like, he cannot drop back 600, 700 times this year because he's just, you don't know what you have in him for the future. And he is the most important piece. T.Y. Hilton is not the most important piece. Getting a guy like Lev not only adds a dynamic run game, but also the ability to catch passes out of the backfield. He is a truly special player and a more special player than T.Y. Hilton. So for that reason, I think the Colts are in. Obviously, from you hit the nail on the head. I think the Falcons are in because you already have Freeman. So all you're doing is getting rid of, your change of pace guy, which you can fill that role, but you need another edge rusher to and run stopper, because TJ Watt's pretty good at both. But definitely the edge rusher to really take that defense to the next level. And obviously from the Steelers, yes, you lose out on Lev, but you add a dynamic wide receiver in T.Y. Hilton to be opposite the best in Antonio Brown. And no, he's not Lev Bell, but the combination that I think you get from Tevin Coleman, and let's not forget they have James Conner on the team who they like. Now, obviously not as much as Lev, but who they do like. That combination and that new running back committee in Pittsburgh, I think can get it done with the addition of T.Y. Hilton to the offense that already boasts Antonio Brown. So obviously, with all those things considered, and the fact that it works out financially for everybody, I think this is the first ever three-way trade that is actually a slam dunk.
I couldn't disagree more. Atlanta is the only one I like it for. I think it's great for the Falcons. I actually already love their edge situation with Vic Beasley, and Takk McKinley, trust me, is about to blow up. But too much edge is not a thing. So I love adding TJ Watt. I love adding TJ Watt to that team. And I don't mind losing Tevin Coleman. Now, I don't think he's their change of pace guy. I know that's kind of a pretty easy thing to call the second running back. He and Freeman are both feature backs, and they just happen to play on the same team. You know what I mean? But the fact that you still have Freeman under contract, and then they added Ito Smith and Justin Crawford this year, those are change of pace backs for Freeman. This is a slam dunk for Atlanta, no doubt about it. I don't like it for Pittsburgh, and honestly, it may sound ridiculous. I don't hate the move from Bell to Coleman at all. I mean, kind of like what South said. Yeah, it's a downgrade, but I think both Atlanta running backs are top 10 running backs in the league if they had their own backfield, and Coleman would. So I like it there. I don't like losing TJ Watt. Linebacker is already a weak spot for Pittsburgh with the unfortunate departure of Ryan Shazier as well. So losing TJ Watt is brutal, especially if it's for a luxury third receiver. Pittsburgh does not need T.Y. Hilton. Would they like T.Y. Hilton? Of course they would. Why not? But I'm not losing these guys when I've got, like you said, the best receiver in the league on AB, and I've got Juju on other side / slot, whatever. I'm not trying to weaken what's probably the weakest part of my roster already just to add T.Y. Hilton and downgrade at running back. And I don't like it from Indy's perspective. Certainly, I'm okay with it from their perspective, but if you take T.Y. Hilton off that roster, that's the worst set of receivers in the entire league by a lot. Unless, of course, Deion Kane and Maurice Fountain are great rookies, late-round picks. I'm not going to bank on it.
Yeah, but you don't think a healthy Andrew Luck can make good? Like we were raving about Dante Moncrief because of what Luck was able to do with him. Like
I think raving is a really scary word to say there.
Oh my! Stop. We all had him way too high in our fantasy projections last year, with the thought that Luck was going to be his quarterback, and he let us down.
And he's a better receiver than the guys they have on the roster behind T.Y. Hilton right now.
Right.
So I'm not trying to say they'd be trash. Obviously, Luck is the type of guy who's going to make his receivers better. But ultimately, I think Indy would do it if they got Bell and Watt for like TJ and say, or TY and say Marlon Mack. But I don't think Pittsburgh does it then. So like Atlanta has to be there from the Steelers side, but I think it ruins it for Indy. I just don't think Bell's enough for me to lose those guys.
And I think Bell's the best. I personally think Lev Bell is the most special running back in the NFL, just because of what he gives you on both the facets of the game, and without a very strong offensive line in Indy, I love how Bell plays the game for the Indianapolis Colts and for Andrew Luck, which is why I'm okay giving up on a guy like T.Y. Hilton, knowing that my healthy quarterback is going to make the other wide receivers better, but the pressure is off my healthy quarterback with the best running back, well, arguably the best running back in the NFL.
See, and I'd counter that quick by saying I'm still very, very much a Marlon Mack believer, and we're judging him off of a rookie season, which first off is a problem with everybody saying rookies, but also as much as you're going to tell me Andrew Luck can make these trash receivers better, Andrew Luck's going to make Marlon Mack a really good running back because people are going to be scared of the pass. And Marlon Mack gives you just as much as Bell in the receiving game. So none of this is me saying Marlon Mack is trash. All of this is me raving about how
much better Lev Bell is than Marlon Mack or Tevin Coleman or anyone else we're going to talk about in this trade. The only reason I would do it from the Steelers standpoint, just to jump back to what you said there, is I understand what losing Lev does and the convenience of having T.Y. Hilton be your number 2 or number 3 receiver, however you want to look at that. Even downgrading from Bell to Coleman, whatever that is, adding T.Y. Hilton basically is, I dare you to beat us to 50 points.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't do it. I don't care how bad Ben is on the road, beat us to 50 points.
Right.
All right. Well, it feels like the consensus in the room here is this is not our first successful 3-way blockbuster trade. As much as Rocco wanted it.
It was a great effort.
was.
I applaud it. It was hard for me to shoot it down because on the surface I didn't hate it, but ultimately I'm going to go with a no. That's a no from me, dog.
Generally speaking, okay, Randy. Generally speaking, if I bring something to the table in this group, it's gonna get shot down.
Yeah, that's going to be a hard no. All right, guys, let's take a second here and talk about our friends at Gorb. And yes, I did say friends because we don't just partner up with anybody. We've had several different people approach us about a partnership here on the podcast. We only partner up with people who we definitely believe in, and we believe in our friends at Gorb. That's GHORBH. You may have caught the video some time ago of the speech that went viral about telling us how in life you've only got 2 choices. You could either get hungry or you can be hungry. Well, that stuck with all of us. And we decided to partner up with Gorb because it gives us a constant reminder of really what we're trying to do here with the podcast. We decided to get hungry and go after it and approach this thing and chase after our dreams of really having a life of just soaking up as much football and talking football as much as we can, instead of being hungry and always wishing that we would have just went after it. And I don't know if you're on social media, but if you are, you have probably seen the hashtag Gorb just about everywhere, giving us that constant reminder of in life, you've really got those 2 choices, to get hungry or be hungry. You can check them out at GHORBH.com to find out more about the message, more about the social media movement, and to check out all their great gear that they have. They've got stuff for men, for women, for kids. They've got all kinds of colors, all kinds of styles, just great stuff, top notch, because like I said, we don't just partner up with anybody. We only partner up with the best. Check them out today, GHORBH.com. All right, let's roll into the second grouping here of Who Says No questions. And the first one on the list is, who says no? Amari Cooper traded to Dallas for Jalen Smith and a 4th rounder. What does the cap look like here?
Cap is good here for both teams. Raiders are currently only 2.3 under. They would gain 3.5 from moving Amari. Smith would add just over $1 million for Oakland, so they'd get an extra 2.5 in relief. Either way, Dallas is good. They're $14 million in free space right now, so they're in pretty good shape either way.
Yeah, so at first glance here, when I looked at this, I said there's no way that either side says no. But then, over the last couple days, I saw some news that Martavis Bryant is possibly looking down the barrel of another suspension. You really don't know quite what you have health-wise with Jordy Nelson. And I don't think the Raiders can afford to do this trade. Look, we joke in fantasy circles about how Derek Carr basically loves Amari Cooper between the 20s, but when it comes time to scoring or making a fantasy impact, he can care less about him. Crabtree's gone. Like I said with the other 2 receivers, you don't quite know what you're going to get this season. So you've got to have some rapport in your wide receiver group with your quarterback. I think Amari Cooper still brings that to the table. I actually am expecting a little bit of a resurgence from him this year. I mean, this could be like a fool me once, fool me twice kind of situation. But I think he's going to have a good bounce back year here. I don't think the Raiders can afford to move on from it, as much as I think Dallas would absolutely love for this to happen. You've obviously moved on from Des Bryant. You need some kind of threat at wide receiver, and this would give you a really nice one, as much as I'd hate to see it. And honestly, I would have said both sides are a go until a couple of days ago, but this Martavis Bryant news has kind of shook me from that.
It's so funny that that how different we view things sometimes. I don't think there's any way that either of the teams say yes in this trade. Dallas doesn't value the wide receiver enough, because even a couple of years ago when they had a talented wide receiver who wasn't past his prime yet in Dez Bryant, they didn't utilize him to the best of his ability. Then he fell off the face of the earth. They haven't made any real moves to go out and get or sign anyone that we know of, at least. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but their big acquisition is Allen Hurns. Hooray, hooray! Nobody cares about that move, and their defense is young and needing to get better in order for them to take the next step. So trading away a guy like Jalen Smith, who, by all accounts, had he not gotten injured, would have been a top 5 pick. They get him in the second round. Obviously, you have to sit on him for a while until he gets 100% better, but has the ability to be a very good linebacker in this league. And you save your pick going forward to continue to build on that defense that needs help. Listen, the Cowboys are set up where it's going to be the Ezekiel Elliott show with a sprinkling in of some passing game around that. I don't think you need to give up a talented young linebacker and a 4th-round pick for a wide receiver that you'll largely ignore. It doesn't make sense. And from the Raiders standpoint, listen, when you're talking fantasy owners, we get very aggravated at the ability of, or the production of, Amari Cooper, because it sucks to have a guy that we all think is a top 10 talent in the league at receiver never score. But the fact of the matter is that the Raiders value him in terms of moving the ball. He does not score for them, which stinks for fantasy owners. But he's got back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons to start his career, had a down year last year, which is going to happen on a bad team, unfortunately. But the fact remains is through 3 seasons, he's got over 200 catches, just short of 3,000 yards. And, what was it, 18 touchdowns. The touchdowns are not, you don't love, but as Amari Cooper goes, so go the Raiders. So even though he's not getting in the end zone, he is as important as any other player not named Derek Carr on that offense. So I don't think the Raiders do it, and I don't think the Cowboys do it. I don't like this trade at all for either side.
Well, I like it for both sides. To an extent. I mean, I'm not in love with it. I could totally be swayed one way or the other. I agree with you, South. I like Cooper for resurgence, but ultimately you do have Jordy Nelson. You might have Martavis Bryant. You added Ryan Switzer for a slot competition with Seth Roberts. I actually really like Marcel Aitman, who they drafted late this year as a big boy, a big body. And I think especially learning from Jordy Nelson will be helpful for him. And on top of all that, John Gruden, you talk about Dallas not caring about receiver. John Gruden won a Super Bowl with like the skeleton of Keyshawn Johnson and the ghost of Keenan McCardell. So he hasn't needed receivers to succeed in his life. What the Raiders do need is somebody not named Emmanuel Lemire to start at linebacker, because I honestly don't know who that is. And he is starting at linebacker for the Oakland Raiders this year. Enter Jalen Smith. So I love it for them, in addition to getting, while it's only a 4th-round pick, it's still another pick. Dallas, on the other hand, yeah, Jalen Smith's a beast. I'm not going to say I think he can be a good linebacker. I think he's a monster. But you do have Sean Lee and 1st-round pick Leighton Vander Esch at linebacker, at least until Sean Lee goes down, which is likely and could definitely hurt them. And it will continue to be their fan base's only excuse why they lost every single game. But ultimately, to maximize Dak's potential, which I might be alone here in the group, but I still think Dak has potential to be very good. You can't have the worst receiving core in the league. You just can't. So I think enter Amari Cooper. It's going to be really hard to ignore him. I know they largely, you say, have ignored receivers. Well, they haven't had any good ones because Dez's career is virtually over. So adding him makes Dak better. It makes Zeke better because you're not going to be able to stuff the box as much. And I don't think keeping the linebacker is worth it. I think Oakland has the depth at receiver to afford the loss of Cooper and bring on somebody not named Emmanuel Lemire. Now, watch, that guy's going to turn out to be like an all-pro because
he'll be a Pro Bowler this year.
I'm bashing him. But, ultimately, Dallas is not going to compete for a division title this year because they don't have anybody who scares anyone in the passing game. And adding Amari Cooper makes that offense much more dynamic.
All right, let's move on to our next one here. Who says no? The Bills trade LaShawn McCoy to the Packers for Jamal Williams and a third rounder. Miles, what does the cap look like?
So the Bills, these teams are both good. The Bills would save $6.3 million of Shady salary, add it to their 17.7 of current room. So they're in awesome shape. Green Bay could afford to bring on Shady salary. They have 11 in space right now, even before clearing Jamal Williams' gigantic $700,000 a year salary, which we're going to chuckle at, and that's like 11 years of work for me. So
like that's Rocco money.
So who's the sucker? Yeah, that's Rocco money right there. $700K.
That's just side hustle money for him. Look, this is an intriguing trade on the surface, just because, like, when you look at Shady McCoy, you feel like he's one of those players where you have to say the style that he plays, the usage that he's had over the last couple of years, he's got to be on the downswing of things, but he's also still productive enough that on the right team could help make a championship run. So it's appealing to the Packers for sure. He fits in obviously extremely well in the passing game, which is what they like out of their backs, which is why you still see wide receivers playing the running back position in Green Bay, because they want people who can catch passes and be a part of that element. So you'd be upgrading there significantly. I think for the Bills to make this move is a little too costly here. Like, Shady is still kind of like the face of your franchise. And I get that, like, you're probably not really competing right now, but you can't sell away Shady McCoy and also sell your fan base on the fact that, hey, look, we're trying to build on what we did last year as a playoff team. You can't do it. I think you have a young quarterback, obviously. Either way you look at it, no matter who starts there, you're going to have a young quarterback. You need a reliable running back. I'm not sure that Jamal Williams is that guy. And then you're also giving up a draft pick. And I don't know. I feel like this is a no-go for both teams.
Let me tell you why you're wrong.
I'm sure you will.
Go ahead.
Listen, as long as Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback, Green Bay has a chance. So adding Shady McCoy, even for the tail end of his career, gives them an even better chance, because what they have right now is, I'm not even going to say good, not great. I'm going to say it's fair, not good. You know what I mean? I think with a better situation behind Aaron Rodgers would only make Aaron Rodgers that much better. You're running out of time, so you got to get it done. Okay? I don't like the building on the playoff run for Buffalo. You're not building on the playoff run. And if you're a true Buffalo Bills fan, you understand that you're not building on the playoff run. This is a new team now. It is a new team with a new franchise quarterback, or what you hope to be a franchise quarterback, in Josh Allen. Everything is going to be built around Josh Allen at this point going forward. And what you can use are young players to save cap space and additional draft picks to build around said franchise quarterback. So trading Shady, although it hurts on the surface, you're trading him for youth at the running back position and additional picks to build around your franchise quarterback. That's why I'm all for this trade for both. This is one of the few trades that on this list that I see that actually, although it hurts Buffalo in the standpoint of maybe marketing Shady McCoy, it doesn't hurt the team, because the team is already, whether you want to admit it or not, the team is already in rebuilding mode under new franchise quarterback Josh Allen. And Shady gives Aaron Rodgers some added protection and ability to go with him to help push them along on their Super Bowl run.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This was my yes. This was my absolutely getting it done on both sides. I liked the last one. I love this one for both sides because I think the only issue here is the media and fan outrage in Buffalo of losing Shady McCoy. That's it. And I do now. Maybe this all stems on South. The biggest thing you said that I disagree with. I do think Jamal Williams could be that guy. I don't think he's going to have a Shady McCoy career, but he can be the lead back in a backfield. I believe that. So ultimately, I think as the Bills, you can sell. I'm trading 2 young quality players is what I'm getting. And I don't want to watch Shady fade on a team that okay, it's harder to sell because they accidentally made the playoffs last year. But of all the teams that made the playoffs, who's least likely to go back? Probably Buffalo. So by making this trade, you now have 6 picks in the top 4 rounds next year, plus still a starting running back to go with Josh Allen. And Green Bay, you guys covered. Adding McCoy to Aaron Jones in that backfield, I love it.
All right.
South, we made you be right. Just say it. You like the trade.
Look, I'm still not sold as much on Jamal Williams as you guys are apparently. So
I'll take it.
It's not about. But see, this trade is not about being sold on Jamal Williams. It's about adding youth to the Buffalo Bills to build around Josh Allen. Nobody here is saying that Jamal Williams is the answer to this trade. The answer to this trade is they've already got their future signal caller or what they hope to be. We need to build around him. The way to do that is with youth and draft picks, not with 30-plus-year-old Shady McCoy.
I get that, but there's no urgency to throw your young quarterback onto the bus. With Shady McCoy, you have a workhorse still. A guy that they could lean on in order to not put all that pressure on him and just set him up to fail. So I guess that's kind of my biggest argument with the whole thing. So I'm on my way to being sold on it. I'll leave it at that. All right, who says no? This is actually our last technical trade here in this discussion. The Patriots trade Gronk to the Jaguars for A.J. Boye and a 3rd rounder. What's the cap look like on this, Miles?
Believe it or not, A.J. Boye is the high-ticket player here, thanks to last offseason big market deal and free agency. He would add $13.5 million to the Patriots, while Gronk clears only $8.9 million. Pats are 12.2 under the cap, so it would work for them. The Jags are 20 million under. They're no concern. So this works both ways as far as the money goes.
I'll tell you where it doesn't work both ways.
Everywhere else.
Everywhere else. Look, here's the reason. It's appealing as far as team needs, obviously. But if you're the Jags, as you detailed earlier, you're not moving on from the best cornerback in the game. Yes, he is an expensive ticket. I do realize you've got a lot of talent in that secondary.
He's not the best cornerback on his team.
I think he still is.
What?
Still think he is.
All right. Look, you can't say stuff like that because it makes you sound stupid.
Why?
How is he? Listen, I love AJ Boye, and this is a side.
Wait. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Did you forget that Jalen Ramsey is a thing?
No,
if you forgot, then I'll let you slide. Wow. Just admit that you forgot.
They're just 2 totally different styles to me.
That is
true. I just prefer the style of AJ Boye. Look, you're getting 2 guys who are locking down whoever you put against them for the most part. But the appeal to me of why he's so great is that he's just the workman of the group. He's the guy who, just to steal this so overused cliche, just brings his lunch pail every day, punches the clock, puts in the work, punches the clock at the end of the day, and you say, wow, that was really, really efficient and really, really worth every single penny. I know we don't put a ton of stock at PFF grades, but there are not too many guys that are grading out better than AJ Boye. And there are not very many guys who will put up just absolute shutdown numbers. And that's giving all the credit in the world to Jalen Ramsey. But I think Jalen Ramsey is that kind of guy who is a little bit more flash, who's a little bit more, could be a little bit more of a head case, quite honestly. So
he could be a little bit more better than AJ Boye.
Yeah, he very well may be. And that's open to interpretation. But in my opinion, AJ Boye is the better of the 2. I understand where you would think that's crazy, but I was always the kind of guy that was man, I love Bobby Taylor more than Troy Vincent. because he just put in the work quietly. It's just the style that I prefer. So look, I'm not moving him, and I'm not moving a third rounder to bring in Gronk, who is on the fence apparently about whether or not he wants to continue playing football. Now he's in for this year, but what's the story? Next year he's going to decide, hey, I'm done playing football. Now I'm going to be a pro wrestler. Like, it could happen like that. And then if you're the Patriots, if you move Gronk, Brady's going to retire.
Yeah.
So it's a lose-lose situation, as far as Gronk is concerned for me.
Yeah, he's already reportedly really upset that they moved on from Brandon Cooks and Dion Lewis. To move Gronk might be the last straw there for Tommy. But I hate it more for Jacksonville. The third rounder's going the wrong way here. AJ Bouye is the better player at this point in this trade. He just is. And I was going to say that, and I thought I was going to get laughed at, but then South said he's the best corner in the league, so I'm fairly safe. I could be sold that he's the third best corner in the league. But now he's not better than Jalen Ramsey. Anyways, the thing I like about AJ Bouye more than anything, the first touchdown he gave up last year was in the AFC Championship. That's a long time to not give up a touchdown in today's NFL. But for me, if I'm Jacksonville, the best part of my team is my defense. My defense is ridiculous. And I think losing AJ Bouye gives up more points than adding Gronk gives me. They don't have any names in their pass catching core, and I think that's probably the way they like it because there's no pressure to force the ball. And on top of that, trust me, I'm not saying he's Gronk. They have Austin Seferian-Jenkins at tight end. That's good enough for me for a team that's totally based on quick passing and shoving the ball down your throat with Leonard Fournette. So I hate it from Jacksonville's standpoint because I think not only are you losing the better and more important player, and as South said, the more dedicated player, you're also losing the third rounder. I hate that.
Here's why I like it. One, Gronk
you don't have to watch Gronkowski play the Jets anymore.
Right.
No, honestly, Gronk doesn't bother me. I'll watch Gronk play all day. Like, everybody knows it's Tommy I hate. Like,
Tommy.
Listen, touchdown Tommy. So where was I? I love it because Gronk doesn't want to be in New England anymore. So I like all this talk about him not wanting to play football. I don't think he doesn't want to play football. I think he doesn't want to play in New England. I think he is the type of person who that people don't have fun in New England. That's Gronk. Like, Bill Belichick let him go somewhat, but I don't think he wants to be anywhere near that franchise anymore. So he wants out. Tommy is too stubborn to retire. He's not going to retire because you trade Gronk. He's going to throw that out there, and he's going to throw it around. Until that man has every passing record known to man, he's not retiring. I'm calling it, okay? That's that. The reason why I think it works out for both teams is because I'm under the impression that Jalen Ramsey is the best corner on that team because it's the right impression. I'm under the impression that, no, you can't stick anyone back there, but AJ Bouye, as good as he has benefited greatly the last 2 seasons that he's played by phenomenal front sevens. Phenomenal front sevens. It's very easy to cover for short periods of time when your team is getting after the quarterback. And I'm not using that as a slam on AJ Bouye. I'm just saying that, like, the guy came out of nowhere after a very good season in Houston 2 years ago, signed a big fat contract with Jacksonville, proved it to an extent, but take away the pass rushes of those 2 defenses over the past 2 years and make AJ Bouye cover a little bit longer. Like, put AJ Bouye in a Jets jersey. He's not AJ Bouye. I'm sorry, he's not. It absolutely matters the team around him. And I mean that, and I'll say that for anybody. Like, I'm not slamming on him. Darrelle Revis was at his best when the Jets front seven was at their best. It happens throughout history. Richard Sherman was a monster when you had a 7-man defensive rotation on the line in Seattle. It absolutely matters.
We could throw out the hypotheticals of whether you move them.
But I will say this. Let me just get this last point in. The reason why I make this trade is because, other than Tom Brady not being able to hold on to the ball in the fourth quarter, the reason why you couldn't beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl is because Nick Foles was having a passing clinic on you. Like, you need something in your secondary. And obviously it's not Malcolm Butler, because otherwise they would have just put him in the game. All right? You need something in your secondary. So you make this trade for a guy who doesn't want to be on your team anyway, the guy who's always causing media drama, the guy who's always causing a headache. You trade him for a great corner. You just do.
Look, we can throw out hypotheticals and all this different stuff. You know what isn't hypothetical? Number 2 corner in the league with 41.7% of catches against him. Spiking the ball into the ground on every play yields a passer rating of 39.6. Targeting AJ Boye yields a passer rating of 36.8. 36.8. Like, look, Jalen Ramsey's much flashier. He's got a 47.2 against, which is not something to laugh at all. He turns it over a little bit more, but Boye is just putting the work in. I cannot move on from him. I just can't. I had those numbers written down, and I just decided for whatever reason not to spit them out before. But I felt like I couldn't move on from this point until I got them out. So
I just can't touch that defense.
No.
I'm not touching the Jaguars defense. It works. It makes that slop of an offense get to the AFC Championship game. I'm not touching it.
All right, last one here. This is one that I came up with, so feel free to roast me on the Twitter machine, whatever you want to do. But this is I love this idea. Who says no? NFL division realignment. Okay. Whoever says no, this could be teams specifically say no, fan bases, the league, etc. Here's the new NFC East. It's Philadelphia, Washington, New York Giants, Carolina. AFC East, New England, New York Jets, Buffalo, Pittsburgh. NFC South, Dallas, Atlanta, New Orleans, Tampa Bay. AFC South, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Kansas City, Miami. NFC North, Green Bay, Chicago, Detroit, Minnesota. Sucks for you. AFC North, Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Tennessee. NFC West, Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Arizona. Too bad, so sad. AFC West, Denver, Los Angeles, Houston, Las Vegas. Any thoughts on these new divisions I've come up with?
I have a few issues.
I have a lot of issues.
Stop.
First off, I think Houston and Kansas City fans would wonder why bother. Like the AFC West, and I don't know if you were just trying to make as many changes as you could within reason, but like the AFC West rivalries are great, and Houston is barely more west than Kansas City, and it is more south. So I almost would rather leave those two alone.
That was strictly travel related.
Yeah, but like how much further?
It's not necessarily further. It's just
like,
easier to get to Houston.
Well, it's because Kansas City's in the middle of nowhere, but
right.
That's beside the point. I think it's also hard to swallow moving Dallas and Pittsburgh away from their long-time division rivalries. And I know Pittsburgh-Baltimore, not so much long time, but it has been awesome. But Pittsburgh-Cleveland, Pittsburgh-Cincinnati, not to mention Dallas with Philadelphia and Washington and even the Giants. And then on top, I know times are changing, but a few years ago, if you put the Patriots and the Steelers in the same division, there would be riots in Boston and Pittsburgh, knowing that one of them is not winning a division every year. Now, I know Tom and Ben are kind of on their way out, so that's not as big a deal. But,
you got to worry about Sam Darnold winning the division for the next 10 years after that. So,
tell me more about this. Look, the appeal to me of that was the fact that you get to see twice and maybe 3 times a year New England and Pittsburgh. So
yeah, it's true.
That was the appeal to me.
It was hard to look at that one, though, and say anything about it because they could both be trash within 3 years, and the world would be a better place for it, honestly. But
thank the good Lord.
And the other thing I kind of didn't like, I mentioned like Dallas and Pittsburgh longtime rivalries. Like the NFC South is starting to be some really great rivalries because that division just changes hands so often that it almost feels like a real natural hate is brewing there. And I don't want to break that up because it took 15 years to build it. So now we're going to remove some of these teams and split them up a little bit. And I know 3 of them are still together, but and I guess everyone hates Dallas. So those 3 teams can hate on Dallas a little bit. I don't know. Some of it felt like purely travel related. And I guess as a fan, and I have no imagination as a human being, it's not my money, so I don't care how much you have to travel. I want to play the Cowboys twice a year.
Right.
So listen, I've actually been a fan of the thought of realignment for a couple of years now, and I think as far back as 3 years ago, I took out a United States map and I wrote down, where all the teams are, and then tried to realign them based on area. And I think, yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest problem I have with this is that you're taking away rivalries, which I get you have to do if you're going to do a realignment, but you're kind of ignoring the potential rivalries that could be. Like if I'm going to do this little scenario here, I'm going to make sure that the Texans and the Cowboys, if I'm taking the Cowboys out of the East, I'm going to make sure the Texans and the Cowboys are in the same division. And we have a battle for Texas every year, because that's something that I think Texas fans, the state of Texas could get behind if you're going to remove Dallas from the Washington, New York, Philadelphia, market games there. I don't love breaking up the AFC West for the sake of what is a couple of degrees of longitude. You know what I mean? Like Miles said. I mean, that's a great division. I love that you didn't touch the NFC North, but realistically, that's the only division that's left that is actually everybody's where they're supposed to be.
That's a good one.
That's an easy one.
Both of the Norths are really good geographically, currently as
yeah.
they are.
Yeah. I would have left Pittsburgh in with the other ones. I personally, if I was doing this, my AFC East would have been Jets, Pats, Bills. And then I would have probably taken, since you already broke up the AFC East and there's no reason to keep them there, I probably would have stolen the Redskins in that situation, because you've already broken up the real Dallas, Washington. Like, nobody cares. Washington Eagles and Washington Giants is not as big as Washington Dallas. You know what I mean? So if you take Dallas out, I would then move Redskins to that AFC East, have them cross over conference, and then build a completely new we'll call it, we don't even have to call it by I love the North, South, East, West, but you're kind of going to get like a central Eastern Coast thing going on where you have, Baltimore, Carolina, Tennessee, and, probably Atlanta in that case. Or, we could have a really fun one and have all three of the Florida teams in the same division. You know what I mean? Like that's an awesome idea too. So,
I know.
I think there are fun ways to do this, and I really, mainly just because it's South, I just disagreed with the way South did it because it's South.
Yeah, I know. Ultimately, he had said he just kept AFC, and NFC. But if you're going to do it, you got to go full out. Like Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and Washington. There's a division. New England, New York, Buffalo. That's a great division. Like you said, Rock, with Houston and Dallas, the Battle of Pennsylvania, the Battle of New York City / Northern New Jersey, because that's where we actually play. Like, make
the Battle for New York, adding in the Bills to that. Like all three New York teams.
So
there's only one New York team.
Right.
Shut up.
The Bills already own New York.
The battle for Dirty Jersey.
I just think ultimately, if you're going to do it, just wreck everything and try to totally reform geographical rivalries, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't want to go like super overboard with that here, really. I kind of kept it simplistic and really just for fun. And I knew we would get more toward like the, you have to go for it all the way. So maybe it'd be a fun exercise to see what everybody comes up with, if you did a realignment. And then we can kind of put it out to vote or whatever. And Rocco could text his whole family of 70,000 people on Long Island and say, please go and vote for me. And then he'll win. So, including cousin Sal Garoppolo. No, but I think what I did was try and keep it simple geographically, but also like look at some of the new potential rivalries that you would stir up. Like, yes, there are traditional rivalries that you don't want to break up, but like how much more do we want to see Pittsburgh beat up on Cleveland? Like when was the last time Dallas and Washington was really relevant? So when you're looking at like a potential of like a Wentz and Cam, new rivalry there, just a couple different options here that really were appealing to me, like getting Houston and the Chargers. Those two great defenses going at it, and just a couple different ideas that I liked. So it was really more for fun. I didn't want to just do another trade, and I thought it would bring up some good conversation. But that's going to be the challenge. If you're listening and you want to come up with a realignment package and send it out to us, you could do that. And then we'll all come up with our best effort and throw it out there as well, just for fun, and see how different or how far apart we are with things. All right, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the show. Be sure you're keeping up with us on social media, facebook.com/footballgoons. On the Twitter, we are at footballgoons, and right here on our YouTube channel, live for every show, Sunday nights, 9 o'clock. Make sure you're keeping it locked into footballgoons.com as well, all off season, because we don't take an off season. And our fantasy rankings and a couple different things are going to be continuously updating. I know there's an update coming up, a big time update coming up of our fantasy rankings. So you're going to want to make sure you're staying on top of that as well. Don't forget, hit us up with any divisional realignment ideas that you might have on social media, or just comments about some of the trades that we presented tonight. We'll catch you next time.